I'm going to be demonstrating the Mason's Trichrome stain. The method that I use is going to be from the AFIP, Armed Forces Institute of Pathology, Laboratory Methods in Histotechnology. And it's on page 132, I believe. Yes, 132. The Mason's Trichrome stain is one of the most popular stains for collagen. It's the three stains, which stands for the tri, that it's going to be doing is the nuclear stain, which is going to stain kind of a purplish black. You'd ideally like it to be more on the black side, but they're depending upon the hematoxin and the iron and other factors, it could end up a little bit of purplish black. And then it stains other background items with the Bieberg scarlet red, muscle and other surrounding tissues. The phosphatungstic acid is a differentiator to take out some of the Bieberg scarlet, and then the collagen itself is stained with the aniline blue. Now the trichrome stain has different theories on how it actually works. One of the theories, and the one that I believe, is that it's a dye molecule size, and it's replacement of dye molecule size. Otherwise, why not just stain with the aniline blue? Since the blue is the collagen, and that's what you're really looking for. Why not just have it stain just for that and not have the other colors? Well, because of the way the stain works, the Weigert's actually takes up some of the tissue in the nuclei and actually some of the elastic fibers and other things. Then the Bieberg scarlet actually has a larger dye molecule size than the aniline blue. So it's going to take up certain structures and stuff like that. And then you're going to take a little bit of that out with the phosphatungstic acid. And then whatever is left over, which would ideally be the collagen, is going to be taken up by the aniline blue. And that's how the stain works. The first step to this stain is deparaffinization. As with all stains that we do with formula fixed paraffin embedded tissue, we have to deparaffinize. Now I have these out on the counter because I am using a xylene substitute called Safe Clear. This is the what I recommend. It's an aliphatic hydrocarbon, and there are other xylene substitutes, but you want to be really careful which one you choose. Not all substitutes are alike, and actually some substitutes are worse health-wise than xylene itself. Some of the limonene and things like that. So make sure that you're getting an actual aliphatic hydrocarbon or mixed naphthol as your xylene substitute. Then you can deparaffinize on the counter. The things that I want you to know about a xylene substitute, there's a couple things to note with it. One is you want it fresh within a couple days for sure in your staining solutions when you're deparaffinizing. The reason you want it fairly fresh is because they tend to absorb water more quickly than xylene itself. The other thing you want to know when you're using a Safe Clear or a xylene substitute is it takes a little bit longer to actually deparaffinize. So you need to account for that. Whereas it might take 5 minutes for xylene in each solution, it's going to take 6 minutes for the xylene substitute. So I have my slides here. Today I'm doing some lung with heart mixed in. So you get a good variety of tissue there. You get some muscle, you get some esophagus is going to be a part of in there. And you also get the alveoli and some of the collagen surrounding that. So we start off with the xylene substitute. I'm going to put it in for 6 minutes. Had this been a real xylene, I would have to do this under the hood, and it would only take 5 minutes. So I'm going to do 3 changes of this xylene, or xylene substitute in this case, and I'm going to do them 6 minutes each. If it had been xylene itself, we'd be under the hood, and I would do them 5 minutes each. I'm going to move it into our next solution and go. And if you notice, I gave it a little bit of agitation as I switch it into the next solution. Okay, our 5 minutes is up again, or 6 minutes in this case is up again. So I'm going to switch it into the next solution. So that's 3 changes of xylene or xylene substitute. Okay, so we've gone another 6 minutes in the xylene substitute. And the next step that you're going to do is go into the 100% alcohol. Now, you've got 2 changes of 100% alcohol after the xylenes. Xylene cannot mix with anything other than 100% alcohol. Now, you have a slightest bit of leeway, but why do that? So have fresh 100%, at least at your very first one, very first station. If it's kind of foggy or has any issues, then you need to backtrack it into the xylene substitute, and you need to change these to fresh 100% because that means some water has probably gotten into it. Now, people believe differently on this, that you can take a minute or 2 in each 100%. I don't believe that that's necessary. I think, 20, 30 seconds in each one is perfectly fine, or just agitating it several times through each alcohol is fine. So we're going to do 2 steps of 100% alcohol. We're going to do a 95% alcohol. We're going to do an 80% alcohol, and then we're going to go to water, and then we're ready to begin our staining. So I'm just going to agitate it a few times. I believe that personally that is plenty enough. It doesn't cause me any troubles. I might go 10 or 20 seconds. So I'm going to set this timer for maybe 30 seconds. Okay, our 30 seconds is up in that one, and we'll go to the next 100%. So the first 100% is actually getting the xylene off, or the xylene substitute. Your second one is just a cleaner 100%. Then your next one is actually bringing it down gradually and getting into the water. So we've got another 20, 30 seconds in the 95% alcohol with some agitation. Then we're going to bring it into the 80%, 20 to 30 seconds with some agitation. And then your last step is just bring it to water, and you hold it into the water. Let's get these out of our way. Now, the most critical steps in the deparaffinizing process is that initial xylene and that initial 100%. Those initial xylene or xylene substitutes really is what's dissolving the paraffin out so your tissue can take up the stain. So you really want to make sure you do it the full 6 minutes in that xylene or xylene substitute in all 3. So now we're ready to begin our stain. There was another thing I wanted to mention about xylene. If you happen to have this type of setup where you're staining and you're using this type of a bucket for staining, what you need to know is this green bucket is meant for xylene or a xylene substitute, and it doesn't dissolve the plastic or melt it or cause any problems. And this is meant for the alcohols and any water. So if you happen to have a stain set up using these type of buckets, you want to make sure that only these have the xylene or xylene substitute in them. The next step we're going to do is actually begin our stain. I'm putting the slides in this rack because I have these smaller buckets. And the first step is to put the tissue sections into Bouins after deparaffinization. Now, there's different ways you can do the Bouins. You can put it in the microwave for a minute or so. And some people have success with that. I don't particularly like that, and I've had mixed results for some reason with that. But people swear by it and that it works. What I do in this lab is I'll put it for an hour at 60 degrees in our 60-degree oven. Here's our 60-degree oven, and we'll put it in there for 1 hour. Okay, our time is up. 60 minutes is up. It's been in the Bouins at 60 degrees for 1 hour. Now, another way you can do it, if, we're in research here, so there's times where we're kind of pressed for time. We have several slides and we know more coming the next day. So we'll probably put this and hold it overnight in the Bouins. And we have really good success with our stain doing that. We kind of run things down and put it in the Bouins then overnight, and then the next day we begin our staining. We rinse them and begin our staining. Different methods that you can do with the Bouins, repeating that, is you can try the microwave method. I don't personally like that method. I've had mixed results. The methods that work for us in our laboratory is either 1 hour, 1 or 2 hours, it doesn't matter. You can leave it in the 60-degree oven. In the interest of time, I just do it for 1 hour. Or you can leave it in the Bouins for 4 hours to 24 hours, however long you would like, and it doesn't seem to affect the result of the stain. The one thing that I did note is if I leave it less than an hour and just like room temperature or in the oven, if it's less than that, it seems to somewhat affect the stain. It's not getting mordanted really well to carry on for the rest of the staining. So I'm going to go ahead and rinse the Bouins out of the tissue in just regular tap water in the sink. Now Bouins is dangerous. Normally we deal with the Bouins under the hood. I keep it closed at all times until, just as I'm transferring things and stuff, but most of the time you're going to want to deal with Bouins under a hood. Bouins is a mixative. It's a fixative. It's actually a mixture of picric acid, formalin, and acetic acid, and there's different theories about shrinkage and swelling and how the actions of this solution actually works and how the acid actually helps this trichrome stain, and you can read up on that. There's plenty of sources for that. So our tissue is rinsed well. We've gotten the Bouins out. It doesn't need very long. It just needs until the yellow looks like it's mostly out. And then we're going to go into the Weigert's hematoxylin. Now the Weigert's hematoxylin is a mixture of hematoxylin and 95% ethanol. And the protocol for that is in the AFIP manual. It's a 50-50 mixture of this and ferric chloride in distilled water. We usually mix this fresh and within a week or so until we start seeing it deteriorate or not picking up the stain well. In actuality, we don't like to fully mix the whole Weigert's completely fresh. We would keep probably 50% of the old and 50% of this solution in the container new because it's got a little bit of a ripening and we've had better results with that. Again, that's a judgment call after you've tried the stain. You might try it fresh the first time and see your results and see how dark it is. In the AFIP manual, it states to leave it in the Weigert's iron hematoxin for 10 minutes. We found in our lab that we like to overstain it for 20 minutes. And the reason for that is as it goes down, the fever scarlet acid fuchsin and the phosphotungsten has an acid component in them that's actually differentiating the Weigert somewhat. And we've had some results every once in a while where the nuclei turns a little bit red, especially if the Weigert's is very fresh. So if you're faced with that, you may want to consider leaving it in the Weigert's longer. Okay, so we're leaving it in there 20 minutes. We've got our timer set. I gave it some agitation. Also, Weigert's we tend to keep it covered because it does ripen and stuff like that with the air and light. So we leave it in this darker container. Okay, our 20 minutes is up. We're going to rinse it in the sink. I like rinsing the Weigert's hematoxin out with hot water or warm water for the 10 minutes. That's important to note. It does have a little bit of a background stain occasionally, and the warm water seems to help with that. The other thing is too, as with all hematoxylins, there's a part where we call it bluing. In this case, it's not going to blue because the metal mordant in the dye lake is actually iron. So it should be a little bit darker, more on the black to black purple side. However, that part of it, that part of binding is important. In that bluing step, it actually does a binding with the tissue. So it's important to not really skimp on that too much. So that's why we do it the full 10 minutes. It helps the hemotoxin to not fade, and it helps it with the binding, and it helps it later on through the other steps to react properly. Now while that's rinsing for the full 10 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and start setting up and planning for my final rinses later. Okay, so it's been 10 minutes now. It's done its rinse in the warm water. I look under the microscope and I want to see those nuclei really nice and dark. A little bit over darker than what I would want, because I know that it's going to take a little bit of it out in the subsequent steps. If it's not quite as dark as you want the nuclei and you see a nice chromatin pattern, a little bit darker than you would actually want your end result to be, then you can actually put it back into the Weigers for just a little longer. That's what I recommend at this step. Later on, you cannot put it back into the Weigers later. When you get to the final steps, once you're done with the bluing and stuff like that at the very end, it's not as forgiving to backtrack with this particular stain. Okay, so now I'm going to put it into the Beaver Scarlet Acid Fuchsin. The Beaver Scarlet Acid Fuchsin, it stays in there for 15 to 20 minutes. 20 minutes is the longest you should ever put it into this. After that, you start interfering with its ability to pick up some of the aniline blue and stuff later on, unless you differentiate it longer. So we're going to put it in here for 20 minutes. Now, we make up our own in-house Beaver Scarlet from the AFIP manual, and we've had great success with that. We make it up in fairly large batches. We actually start off with, we make the Beaver Scarlet in one bottle, but we actually put it on there because it looks so similar to the Beaver Scarlet Acid Fuchsin. We made a point to note that this is not the Beaver Scarlet Acid Fuchsin, so people don't mistake it. And then we also have the Acid Fuchsin in a smaller batch because it needs less of it for the final solution. And then these two combine to make this. Okay, so we did our, I did it 20 minutes this time. The Beaver Scarlet Acid Fuchsin lasts quite a long time. It can last up to a month, depending upon its usage and how often you use it. You will note that it'll take longer and longer and start to be a little bit faded. Well, as soon as you see that, then you know you need to replace it. If you keep it in the container like this, before you put the slides in it, you might want to give it a little stir because it does settle a little bit. Stir it up just a little and then proceed on with the stains. The same with the aniline blue. You stir it somewhat and agitate it and have it ready for your staining if you have it sit in the containers like this. This is important that you actually rinse it. I rinse it in just cold tap water. Some people believe distilled water is better. Either one, in my experience, has worked fine. If you want absolute consistency, then you'll want to stick with distilled water, a couple changes of distilled water. Today I'm going to go ahead and put it in the tap water. Now this is important because the tap water actually brightens and binds this Beaver Scarlet Acid Fuchsin. It makes it a much brighter stain, so you don't want to skip that step at all. So one thing you're going to notice is that now that I'm rinsing, I have the water, the flow of water off to the side, and I have the slides on the other side because I don't want the flow of water actually directly on the tissue itself or too close, because I don't want to actually rinse the tissue away or have a chance of damaging the tissue sections. So you're going to rinse the Bibrick scarlet acid fuchsin out just until the water just turns clear, or you see the stain brightening, and the water is maybe a little pale pink. As soon as you see that nice and bright stain, you don't need it for very long, just until that water starts to be clear. The next thing is phosphomolybic phosphotungstic acid. Now we make it in-house in our lab. We make a large batch of it from the AFIP manual. Now, because we make it in-house, there is some slight variability between person to person of whether it's a touch stronger or not, and so that's something that you need to consider when you make things in-house. So even though the AFIP manual states 10 minutes in this phosphomolybic phosphotungstic acid, I have to actually use my judgment and look at it. What I'm looking for with this is for the tissue, and it's hard to describe that until you get an eye for it, but when you first put it in there, it's a nice bright red overall. And at some point, even though this book says 10 minutes, that's not an exact true thing if you understand the stain, because what you're doing is you're differentiating out some of the Bibrick scarlet acid fuchsin. But you don't want to take it out so much that you can overstain with the aniline blue and interfere with your red muscle staining. So in this case, you do eyeball it somewhat. And you wait until you see that in certain areas, some of that red is actually out. It's really red, but it's got some areas that are much lighter or even clear. As soon as you see that, you're going to move on to the next stain. Another thing to note is the aniline blue, you do not rinse after this acid. The aniline blue works much better and picks up better and does its job better when you go directly from the phosphotungstic acid directly into the stain, the aniline blue stain. So you do not want to rinse it, and it does affect the aniline blue picking up the collagen. So I'm seeing here that I have some clear areas. If I look at my slide, I definitely see some very clear areas that are now where the red is lighter and nice and darker in other areas. So directly from here, I'm going right into the stain. I'm going to shake off this last little bit of phosphotungstic phosphomolybic, and I'm going right into my aniline blue. So it's very important to know this step here, how to look at your slide, and when you start seeing, because you're not differentiating out too much of your Bibrick scarlet acid fuchsin, I can't stress that enough, and that you do not go to water between those two steps. Now this is going to be in here for 7 minutes. The protocol here says aniline blue 15 to 20 minutes. Ours we make in-house. It's a little bit strong. We've tested it. And for us, 7 minutes was enough to get beautiful collagen staining and not interfere with the red of the Bibrick scarlet acid fuchsin. So I'm going to set my timer for the 7 minutes, and I'm going to start setting up for the rinsing steps. Setting up for the rinsing steps, we are going to use glacial acetic acid, a dilute glacial acetic acid per the AFIP manual. And again, we make this in large batches in-house in our laboratory. Since we're research, we do everything by hand ourselves. So I'm going to use 2 of these glacial acetic acid solutions for my rinses. And this part goes very quickly. And then I'm going to use a 95% alcohol. I'm sorry, I'm going to use 100% alcohol. Yeah, 95 first, and then we're going to go to the 100%. I fill these up fairly well because I want to rinse even the top part of the slide somewhat. So I've got 95% alcohol, reagent alcohol. And again, we make this up in-house. You probably, in your laboratory, you may buy it already pre-made. But we've marked our bottles and made it up here. And I'm going to have 100% alcohol. And maybe 2 changes actually of 100% alcohol, just to have that extra. And I'm going to rapidly move this down in this part here, because what I want to do is I want to get out the blue just enough to where it's not interfering with the red Bieberg scarlet acid fuchsin, but it still isn't making the collagen really pale, because this is differentiating it. The glacial acetic acid not only takes some of the aniline blue out, but it also makes it even brighter and more brilliant. So that's an important step. The 95% alcohol is just taking a little bit more out, and then 100% is taking a little bit more out, but it's also preparing you to get into your xylene. Now, we cannot cover slip. That's something else I wanted to say about Safe Clear. There are products that you can use that are compatible with Safe Clear for cover slipping, some mounting medias. I haven't liked those, and I don't think others have liked those compatible mounting medias. We found in our laboratory that at the end, it's much better to go into xylene, so we use real xylene under the hood for cover slipping. So you can watch that I move fairly quickly at this stage. I go into my glacial acetic acid, 0.5% glacial acetic acid, and I'm doing very quick dips. I'm going here to my 95, to my 100%, and really you do want to move this fast. And then I go under the hood. I do one last 100%, and I go right into xylene, my 2 xylenes. And the stain is complete, except for cover slipping.